In this lesson, we'll learn how to apply and manage effects here in Illustrator. Alright, now up until now we've talked a little bit about 2 out of the 3 types of appearance attributes that we can apply to an object. We've talked a little bit about strokes, and we've talked a little bit about fills. Now, the third type of appearance attribute we can apply is known as an effect, and there's a couple different areas where we can go to access the effects here in Illustrator. Let me go ahead and just select this logo here. Now, we've got an FX button here in our appearance panel. We can actually drop that down, and you can see here we get a large list of different types of effects that we can apply to an object. Now, we can access a similar dialog here through the Effect drop-down menu. Let's just take a look at that. Now, with the exception of there being a few more options here at the top, we've got the exact same menu options. Now, notice that we've got Illustrator effects and Photoshop effects here. Now, prior to Illustrator CS3, these were actually separated into effects and filters, but with CS3, they actually combined those into just effects. Now, let's talk about why these are separated into Illustrator effects and Photoshop effects. Illustrator effects, now with a few exceptions, can only be applied to vector objects. And to contrast that, Photoshop effects can actually be applied to both vector and raster objects. When I say raster, I mean pixel-based objects, like a photograph. Now, it's also important to understand that some of these effects are actually going to only add vector changes to your object. Now, some of these effects actually will add pixel-based changes to your object as well. Now, even some of these Illustrator effects will add pixels to your object. So you need to be familiar with what the desired output of your file is. So let's just take a look here at these document raster effects settings. Now, these have to do with the quality of the effect that's being applied to your objects here in Illustrator. Now, the first thing we see here is a color model option, and it's set to CMYK by default. Now, we can drop that down and change it to either grayscale or bitmap. We also have some resolution options here. If you're sending your file to a commercial printer, then you want to definitely choose that 300 ppi option. So we also have some background options, whether it's wide or transparent, and then some anti-aliasing options and some other options down here. So keep in mind the desired output for your file and the desired resolution that the effects are going to be applied as. Now, in speaking about the quality of your effects, it's also important to understand scaling of effects and strokes. So let me go ahead and access our Illustrator options with a Control-K keyboard shortcut. And we need to make sure and know if this Scale Strokes and Effects option is currently checked. If we were to come in here and uncheck this option and then increase the size of an object with an effect applied to it, and it's a pixel-based effect, say it's a drop shadow, then it's actually going to decrease the quality of that effect because it's not going to scale it. So this is an important option to remember where this is. Remember, we can also access this through our Transform Panels options as well. So let me just go and cancel this window here, and let's look at a few types of effects that we can apply. Now, there's a lot of different effects, and we're not going to go into detail about all of these effects, but I'm going to go ahead and select the B here from our Woody's Barbecue logo. Now, I'm going to look at this here in the appearance panel, and we can see here that there is an effect applied to this letter B. Now, it's an inner glow effect, and let's just deselect it and zoom in on it here, and it really doesn't look like much of a glow. Let me just go ahead and select it again, and I want to click on the blue link for inner glow right here. Now, it's important to understand also that effects can actually be turned off and on for an object. We can actually hide this effect by clicking on the eyeball there, and you can see that it goes away. So effects are non-destructive and a really good way to preserve the original state of your art. So let's just go ahead and turn that back on, and let's go ahead and click on the words inner glow there. And we've got here an inner glow dialog option window here. So we've got several options here. We've got an option for mode, and right now I have that set to multiply. So essentially I'm tricking my inner glow to be more of an inner shadow because I've set it to multiply, and I've also changed the default color of it here as well. So we've got some opacity options, and we've also got some options for blur. Now, we've also got a center and edge option, and that's where this effect is going to grow from. If it's going to grow from the edge or if it's going to grow out from the center of our object. Let me show you what that would look like. We'll switch that back to edge here. Let's go ahead and cancel that. Now, effects can actually be applied to a single object, a group of objects, or even an entire layer. So let's just come over here and take a look at this Woody's Barbecue logo. Now this is actually a group of objects. Let me just go ahead and select that by clicking on it. You can see here we have group in the appearance panel. Now again, I'm not going to go through all of the different effects here. I'm going to go through maybe some of the ones that you'll use more often. Now I know for me, I use a lot under this stylize submenu here. You can see here we have drop shadow, feather, inner glow, outer glow, round corners, and scribble. So let's just take a look at the drop shadow dialog. Now you can see here that it's a completely different dialog than that inner glow dialog, but some of the options are actually the same. So we can go ahead and hit preview on this. And you can see here the default settings for our drop shadow. Now we can come in and adjust the X offset, the Y offset, the opacity, the blending mode, and even the blur. And we can actually come down here and actually adjust the color as well of our drop shadow. So let me just go ahead and hit OK on that. We'll apply that drop shadow to this group. And you can see here that if I come back in and select this group, the drop shadow effect is there applied to our group. So we can also come in here and make changes to our drop shadow after we've already applied it. So in moving on here, let's go ahead and just take a look at a group, or excuse me, a layer. Now if we come over to our layers panel, you remember here that we've got this targeting column. Now this targeting column is going to allow us to target a layer for an effect. Now you notice here that some of these layers actually have a filled in circle, meaning they already have effects applied to them. So let's actually come in here and minimize that layer here, and let's target the entire envelope layer for an effect. Just come over here and you can see that everything on that layer is now selected. Now we could come in and apply an effect to this entire layer here in the appearance panel. Now in looking at the effects to apply to this layer, again there are a lot of effects here, and I would encourage you on your own time, go ahead and go through some of these and experiment with some of these. Now if you've used Photoshop before, a lot of these Photoshop effects are actually going to look very familiar to you, because a lot of these are exactly the effects right out of Photoshop. So let me just come in here, and maybe we want to add some crop marks to the objects on this specific layer. So let's just go ahead and add crop marks. And you can see here we've added those crop marks to the objects on this layer. Now we can turn those crop marks on and off again through our appearance panel, or we can actually remove that effect just by deleting it here. Now I'm going to come over here back to our primary artboard here and just show you a couple examples of a very popular 3D effect here. Now we've got a 3D effect here underneath effects, and we've got three different options: extrude and bevel, revolve, and rotate. So I've applied a couple different variations of the 3D effect to these two objects here. Now if we select this object and turn this 3D revolve effect off, you can see here that what we've got is just a very simple path, and Illustrator's 3D revolve filter here, or excuse me, effect, has revolved that path around, creating the illusion of a three-dimensional object. Now we can actually click on that and come in here. You can see that there are a lot of settings here in this 3D Revolve Options dialog window, and we're not going to go through all of these settings. Feel free to come in here and experiment with these on your own. These are really a lot of fun to play with. So I'll just go ahead and cancel that. And let's take a look at this box right here. Now right here, if we look at this, this is simply a square that has two different strokes applied to it, as well as a green fill. Now in zooming in on this object here, you can see here what the 3D extrude and bevel effect has done. It's created a three-dimensional object out of this simple square. So again, if we click on that option here, we can take a look at the effect options, and very similar to the previous dialog. Now again, we're not going to go through these, so let me just go ahead and cancel this. What I do want to show you about 3D effects, though, and really any effect, is if you ever find the need to make an effect a permanent change to an object. Notice these are non-destructive because we can turn them off. If you ever want to make this a permanent change, you can always come up here and expand the object with the effect visible. So let me go ahead and expand the appearance of this 3D object on the left here. And you can see now it's now a group of objects. We now no longer have the effect applied to it. So if we zoom in here on this shape, you can see here that these are actual vectors. These are actual vector objects that are grouped together, creating this three-dimensional object. Now, you may find the need to do that if you ever are trying to print or export a 3D object to PDF. You may have to come in and expand it. Now, if you think back to when we were talking about the Pathfinder panel, and we also looked at how there are Pathfinder effects here in our effects menu. So again, remember, these effects only apply to a group or a layer. We can't apply them to individual objects. So let me just go ahead and merge these objects in this group into one object. So let's go ahead and use this merge Pathfinder. It's going to take Illustrator just a moment to render that out. And these are some effects that the end result is not always what you expect. So you have to have a very specific reason to want to use a Pathfinder effect here. But again, we can always come in here and turn that merge effect off, or we can come in and adjust the options for just that merge effect. Alright, so in this lesson we've learned how to apply and manage effects from both the Effect drop-down menu and the Appearance panel here in Illustrator. In the next lesson, we'll continue on and talk about copying appearance attributes from one object to another.